Hi everyone, this video is to cover an example of the Banzhaf power distribution, or in other words, the Banzhaf power index. We're going to be looking at question 12 from the exercises in your textbook. So we have the following weighted voting system. We have a quota of 33, and then we have 4 players involved, and their weights are provided for us in blue. So player 1 has a weight of 18, player 2 has a weight of 16, player 3 a weight of 15, and player 4 a weight of 2. In order to calculate the Banzhaf power index, we have a 4-step process. So we're going to look at this step by step in this video. The first step is to list all winning coalitions. Before we can list all winning coalitions, we really should just kind of look at all the different combinations of how the players can kind of come together. So for example, or to begin, there could be situations where we maybe only have one player who's interested in whatever we are voting on. So we could just look at these from a singular perspective. The next option would be to look at pairings of players. So player 1 and player 2 could team up. Player 1, player 3, player 1, player 4. So I'm basically just holding player 1 fixed, and then I'm pairing player 1 with all the other remaining players. Now that I've run out of different ways of pairing with player 1, let's go ahead and look for unique pairings for player 2. In this case, I only have 2 pairs that I can list here. And finally, if I move to player 3, the only other player that I have not paired player 3 with is player 4. Now we're going to go one more step and look at looking at trios, so groups of 3. So player 1, player 2, player 3. I'm going to hold the first 2 players fixed, and then I'm going to create a new trio of player 1, 2, and 4. So I've exhausted that, so now I'm going to go ahead and do player 1, player 3, player 4, and then lastly there's just player 2, player 3, and player 4. The last group that we can look at would be if all of them were on board. So this would be player 1, player 2, player 3, and player 4. So now we should start adding those weights together. So our solo situations are pretty easy. Player 1 is 18, player 2 16, player 3 15, and player 4 2. So I'm just pulling that information from what we have above in the problem. Then we're going to go ahead and look at pairings. So here's where I'm going to add their weights together. So player 1 and player 2 would have a total of 34. Player 1 and 3 would be 33. Player 1 and 4 is 20. 2 and 3, 31. 2 and 4, 18. And 3 and 4, 17. Then we move on to the trios. So again, we're going to add up those 3 weights to get one value. So 1, 2, and 3 is 49. 1, 2, and 4 is 36. 1, 3, and 4 is 35. And 2, 3, and 4 is 33. And lastly, if we were to add all the weights together, so in that situation where everyone is on board or supporting a certain topic or issue or whatever they're voting on, we are going to have a grand total of 51. So keep in mind, I'm still on step 1 of my problem. So far, I've just looked at all the coalitions. Now I'm going to go through and only look for the winning coalitions. So from here, I'm just going to go through and kind of cross off anyone who does not meet our quota. So remember, the quota is 33. So anyone who has a quota that is smaller than 33 is not going to meet it, so I can ignore them. They're not going to be a winning coalition. So we can see that all of our single individuals, they're not going to win at all, so I'm just going to run some lines through them just to say, I'm going to ignore you now. You're not going to help me out. Going through my pairings, it looks like player 1 and 4, player 2 and 3, player 2 and 4, and player 3 and 4 can all be moved out. I can't work with them because, again, they're not meeting the quota. It looks like all of my trios will make it, and of course, my entire group of 4 will make it. So we've gone ahead and we've listed all winning coalitions. Now, step 2 in each coalition, we want to identify the players who are critical. Recall that a critical player is a player that we need to have in the coalition in order to keep winning. So if that player were to leave, all of a sudden we're not making quota and we're going to lose. So we're going to go through all of our winning coalitions here, so all 7 of them, and we're going to find out who are critical or key players. So, for example, let's look at the pairing of player 1 and player 2. Player 1, we've noted, has a weight of 18. Player 2 has a weight of 16. If, for example, player 1 left the pairing, we go from 34 back to 16, because player 2 is the only one who's supporting it. 16 is less than 33, so now player 2 is losing. So because of this, we can say player 1 is a critical player. But we need to look at the other situation. What if player 2 decides that they don't want to support whatever it is that we're working on or whatever issue it is that we're looking at? So suddenly our weight of 34 with player 2 walking out leaves us only with player 1 who has a weight of 18. 18 is smaller than 33. We're now losing. So it turns out that both of these are critical players. They need each other in this situation in order to meet quota and win. So we continue to do that. So let's look at the trio of player 1, 2, and 4. So I'm going to look at this one right here. For example, in this case, if player 1 leaves, we're left with just players 2 and 4. And we can kind of see in our previous work, players 2 and 4 have a weight of 18. 18 is less than 33. We're losing. So in this case, we would say, all right, player 1 is critical. Now we're going to look at the situation where player 2 walks out on the trio. If player 2 walks out, we're just left with 1 and 4, who only have a collective weight of 20. 20 is less than 33, so it turns out player 2 is still critical in this situation. If player 4 walks out, we still have player 1 and 2 in play. They have a collective weight of 34 without player 4 chiming in. 34 is bigger than 33, so we're still winning. Player 4 is not a critical player, so I'm not going to box that. So what I would like you to do is go through the other winning coalitions. And I want you to go through and identify who those critical players are. Pause the video, take some time, go through your scenarios, and when you're ready, press play. And we'll briefly look at who those critical players are before moving on. Okay, so now that you've had some time, we're going to go ahead and identify the other critical players. So with the pairing of player 1 and 3, it turns out that both of them are critical, and it kind of makes sense given that their collective weight is 33, so if either one of them leaves, they dip below that quota. With our trio of player 1, 2, and 3, the only critical player here is player 1. If player 1 leaves, player 2 and player 3 are kind of SOL. But again, if we look back at the other pairing, so if player 2 leaves, we would have player 1 and 3. Well, we know that they already meet the quota, and if player 3 leaves, then we have player 1 and 2, and they already meet that quota. Moving on to the trio of 1, 3, and 4. It turns out that player 1 is critical and player 3 is critical. And again, for our last trio, notice that player 2, 3, and 4, when we add them up together, they meet exactly the quota of 33. So if any of them leaves, then their kind of alliance falls apart. With our last group, 1, 2, 3, and 4, it turns out that as you go through each of the scenarios, no one is critical. So if one of them leaves, they still have enough votes in order to meet quota. So in this case, we would just say no one is critical. So we're not going to highlight anyone here. So we've gone ahead and taken care of step 2. In each coalition, identify the players who are critical. Now we're going to count up how many times each player is critical. So coming back to our work over here, I see player 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Player 2, I'm seeing 1, 2, 3 times. Player 3, I'm seeing 1, 2, 3 times. And player 4, I'm just seeing once. So we've taken care of step 3. Our final step is convert these counts to fractions or decimals by dividing by the total times any player is critical. So what this is saying is to go through and just count how many boxes we've created here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we're going to write these out of 12. And then we would go through here, and if we can reduce the fractions down, then we should go ahead and do that. So here are the power indices for our players. I hope this video was helpful. If you have any other questions, please let me know.